Hello everyone, so now we will talk about inflation in Syria. So our team members consist 4 members, which is Nur Ala Natasha, Diana Amarina, Annabella, and Nina Zulaika. Hi everyone, I am Anya Natasha going to talk about the inflation situation in Syria. First of all, what is inflation? Inflation simply means the rise in price of goods and services over time. When inflation goes up, it means things cost more and the value of money goes down. So people cannot buy as much with the same amount of money. Syria has gone through very high inflation for several years, known as hyperinflation, which made daily life very difficult for the people there. But now, things are starting to change. According to the Central Bank of Syria, the average inflation from February 2024 to January 2025 was 46.7%. That is still high, but it's much lower than before. For example, in January 2024, inflation was 118.9%, but by January 2025, it dropped to 6.4%. This improvement happened because of a few reasons, mainly because the value of the Syrian currency started to stabilize and the government made some change in their economy and politics. Even with this progress, Syria's economy is still very weak. Around 90% of Syrians are still living in poverty, so while inflation is going down, many people are still struggling. Let's take a look at what challenges Syria still faces and what steps are being taken to help the country recover.
Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Diana Amalina Mitinasir, and I would like to share about the current issues that happen in Syria. Just like Natasha said, the current issue that happened in Syria now is annual inflation in Syria dropped to 6.4% in January 2025, down dramatically from 118.9% in January 2024. Monthly inflation from December 2024 to January 2025 dropped too, from 13.8% to 8.7%. The primary factors behind this is the increase in supply and the exchange rate stability. Based on the analysis, the decline in inflation due to the increase in the exchange rate following the liberalization process. What is liberalization process? In an economic context, it refers to the process of reducing government control and restrictions on markets, particularly in trade and industry, and the currency is starting to show some signs of stability and even small improvement. Also, the graph shows there are significant increase in the supply of goods and materials in the local market because when the supply increases, the demand will also increase. Next, food price generally decrease, such as dairy, eggs, oil, and vegetables. The index as a whole fell to 12.5% in February 2025. Furthermore, on 8 December 2024, President Bashar Assad was ousted after 50 years in power and replaced by Ahmed al-Shara as the new president. Since then, the new leadership has prioritized economic recovery and reconstruction of Syria, with the European Union easing sanctions on energy, transport, and banking to support rebuilding efforts. The European Union aims to facilitate engagement with Syria, its people and business in key areas of energy and transport, as well as to facilitate financial and banking transactions. Apart from this, Minister Basel Abdelhanan still in process of renegotiating with the World Bank to propose the establishment of new projects in energy, agriculture, industry, and infrastructure to secure financial assistance for its economic recovery, particularly for the crippled electricity sector. That's all from me. I would like to pass this to the next presenter, Nina Zulaika. Even though the inflation in Syria this year has decreased, the major impacts is still going on. There are four major impacts of inflation in Syria. The first one is food insecurity and poverty. Do you know over 90% of Syrians live in poverty and many cannot afford basic food? According to the World Food Programme, more than 12 million Syrians are food insecure. The second major impact of inflation in Syria is collapse of purchasing power. A public sector worker earns around 200,000 Syrian pounds per month, which is only about 13 to 15 US dollar. Prices rise daily, so wages quickly become worthless. This creates frustration and increases poverty even for employed people. The third major impact of inflation in Syria is brain drain and immigration. With no economic future and rising living costs, many young Syrians are leaving the country. This leads to a loss of talent and skills, making long-term recovery even more difficult. The last major impact of inflation in Syria is decline in public services. Inflation has made it nearly impossible for the government to fund services like healthcare, education, and electricity. Hospitals lack of medicine, schools don't have supplies, and electricity is often unavailable for most of the day. I will pass my presentation to the next person. Thank you.
There are few policies that have been implemented to solve the issue. The first one is price control. The ministry fixed prices for basic goods. They set price for essential items like foods, water, medicines, and other goods to make it more affordable for the people of Syria to continue living. However, this solution often resulting in a shortage of goods due to the high demand. Other than that, the government also put subsidies on essential items like food, electricity, and fuel to ease the burden on the citizens. However, these subsidies have been reduced over time due to the fiscal constraints. Next is currency stabilization and monetary constraints. The Central Bank of Syria tried to limit the money printing, but due to the crisis occur, it has led to resort to printing more money to fund budget deficit. Lastly, the central bank's liquidity retention policy implemented through withdrawal limits and suspension of foreign currency deposits.
In conclusion, even though Syria's inflation rate has dropped due to exchange rate stability and economic changes, the country is still facing big challenges. These include food insecurity, poverty, low purchasing power, brain drain, and weak public services. To recover, the government is taking steps like price control, currency stabilization, and tighter monetary policies. While these actions are helpful, long-term recovery will need stronger reforms and stable conditions. That's it from us. Thank you for listening.